Welcome everyone to our new normal. This week we are going to have a rant about our new disruptions. Harry, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How's your new normal, Jackie?
My new normal. Well, I'll tell you something that I'm really thankful, which would not have happened many years ago. It is the fact that my son Benjamin, who you know very well, is in Brazil today. And I'm so thankful because my new normal is that he can call me on my cell phone using WhatsApp on the internet, like on the Wi-Fi. And I would say years ago, I never thought that was possible. But even though he's so far away, I really feel like I can get to him anytime I want, or ding him on WhatsApp. So today I was just thinking how thankful I am for the new normal of technology keeping us connected. So that's my new normal. How's your new normal today?
Like staying on the tech topic, it's a new world right now with all the AI coming in. So this week, I was just researching about agentic AIs, how AI can do your work for you, right? So they have agents, right? So it's a new world. I would say it's a new world, and over the span of few episodes we will explore those topics, but I was really amazed by what things can be done today, right?
Oh, wow.
Using AI.
Our new normal at work, which will be another topic, won't it? So this week, let's start talking about our new disruption, which of course, being 2025, is some economic realities we have with our new trade wars. And Harry, one of the things I've been doing a lot of reading with, because we both teach in business, I'm trying to fully understand, how did we get here? What has led to this exact situation today? And it is March 15th, 2025. How did we get here?
So I'm going to shock people by saying this.
Okay.
Canada is in shackles. So we are...
I've never heard you say that before.
Yeah, but our economy is completely shackled, right? It has been shackled for last 10 years or so, right? So let's explore that. Let's understand how we got here. So if you remember, in 2015,
yes.
I'll put up the stats for people. In 2015, the Canadian household income was $70,000 Canadian. If you convert it into USD, that is $54,000 US.
Okay.
And the US income, the median US income was $56,000 US. So our lifestyle, right, between Canada and US was very similar. So Canadians and Americans were almost earning the same amount of money.
Okay.
And I can in fact say that our lifestyle was better than Americans.
In what sense?
Because we have few social contracts that Americans don't have. For example, we have healthcare, right? We have let's say EI benefits if we lose our jobs. We have retirement benefits. Then our maternity leaves are longer, right?
Yes.
You
Some
can
family
share
support structures.
Maternity leaves are longer, sickness leaves are longer. So our social contracts are better. When we earn the same amount of money as Americans do, our lifestyles are better than Americans' lifestyles. So in 2015, just 10 years back, we were on par.
I had never even considered that before.
Yeah.
Okay.
But things started to change because of policy, right? We launched something called as Bill C-69, which is very infamous as No Pipelines Law. Then we have other procedural laws that what has that done? It has stopped all infra projects in Canada for last 10 years. All infrastructure projects, may it be a pipeline, right?
Yes.
May it be an hydro dam, may it be let's say a long distance railway line. All of them were impacted by these laws and procedural changes. Now let's understand how. So what have these laws done, right? These laws have added an additional layer that all projects now need approval of the federal government.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
So what does it do? It increases the time of completion of projects. It increases the time of inception for the projects. So every project in last 10 years, right, has been shackled.
Yes.
Right? So
I had colleagues working on Keystone years ago.
Yeah, not only Keystone, 10 years back in 2015, we were on track to have the Western pipeline,
Yes.
right, going from Alberta to the coast, right, in BC. We had the Northern Gateway project.
Yes.
So we were going to go to the Arctic and export our oil and natural gas and other minerals to Europe and Asia, right? And then we had the Eastward pipeline, right?
Yes.
And project. Plus there was an energy corridor that was proposed, which would have connected all of our country and we could have shared our resources, right? In last 10 years, we got nothing done, right? Except the Western pipeline, which eventually got done this year.
Yes.
But there are a lot of cost overruns, right? It was private before, then it was taken over by the government, and the cost of building it was almost 3 times what was initially thought it would be.
Yes,
right?
It went completely, just the cost of everything, because of the cost annually that changed as well, plus the length of the project.
Exactly.
Was extended? Okay.
Yeah, so this is what I'm saying, like our infrastructure projects, our energy projects, right, our resource world has been shackled for the last 10 years, right? A big example, like a lot of people are proponents of clean energy in our
Yes.
country, and it's nice to have clean energy, but like for example, there is a Site C, the hydro dam that is proposed, that is getting built in British Columbia. When it was initially proposed, the cost was $7.9 billion. By the time it will be completed, the cost is over $16 billion. Now, why do we increase cost like that? Because of the delays. Because if I'm an investor in a project and I'm
Yes.
putting my money in, right, if the project gets delayed, right, my money is just sitting there. And I would need certain returns, right? Because
Yes.
my money is not being used somewhere else.
And when the money's sitting there, it's deflating because of
Yeah,
inflation,
it's deflating, and like I increase my cost of initially
Yes.
investing in that project because the timeline gets extended. So the investor wants higher returns when you delay the projects. So that is what we have done. We have moved an $8 billion hydro project to a $16 billion one, right? So it is just cost overruns. And even the trade part, right? A lot of trade is a hot topic right now. So if you see like the trade policies that we have undertaken in last 10 years, right? It's been really hard. For example, like we had to renegotiate the new NAFTA when Trump was the president in his first term.
Yes, and now that's known as CUSMA.
Yeah, CUSMA,
Yes.
right? So the Canada, US, Mexico deal. So we initially got into a negotiation with the Americans and Mexicans. Then while we were starting negotiations, instead of talking trade, we were talking about environment, right? How every project under the USMCA umbrella would need an environmental assessment, would need a gender assessment, would need a lot of other assessments. And Americans and Mexicans were not favoring that. So what did they do? They just cut us off. Right, there are it's reported in media that for almost 4 or 5 months, right, US was Canada was not part of a discussion for the new NAFTA. We were not part of it. US and Mexico were discussing, and they were going to have a bilateral agreement, like cutting off Canada completely, because both of them were not agreeing with the stuff we were saying. So instead of reading the room, we just started doubling down on it, and they just kicked us off. So we panicked because US and Canada were going to sign a deal.
US and Mexico
US and Mexico
yes,
were
US and Mexico
was sign a deal.
And was this during Trump's first
term?
Okay.
So we panicked, and in the last minute we started negotiating, and we wanted to get in. But what happens when you have been a business professor, right? When you go in at the last minute, you do not have the cards.
You don't have the cards, you don't have any leverage.
You don't have any leverage.
It's too late.
The new Canada, US, Mexico deal was very unfavorable for us, right? Because we went in at the last minute and they had already agreed to a deal and we were just added, right? So we cannot negotiate trade like this, right? Just to add a few things, during In the last 10 years, there is a big war, right, that happened because Russia invaded Ukraine.
Yes.
And they cut off natural gas to the Germans and to the Japanese, right? So Germans and the Japanese came to Canada and said that we need your natural gas. And instead of working with them, right, our government said there is no business case for our natural gas. So we did not export our natural gas to the European economy at the time, right? Because our Prime Minister said that we don't have a business case for it. It doesn't make sense. It absolutely makes sense, right? Because if you believe in climate, Germans are burning coal because we are not providing them natural gas, right? So
we could have done something to stop the coal burning.
Exactly. And why did we say that? Because we don't have a single natural gas export terminal in Canada. One is being built in BC, but it is taking far too long, right? And we don't have the capacity to export it. It's all landlocked, right? So there was a deliberate attempt to shackle the Canadian economy. And just looking broadly right now, what's happening? If you look at, we are a resource country. We have lots of resources. Yes. We have uranium, we have natural gas, we have potash, right? So we need to look at who are the consumers of those natural resources. The top 3 consumers of natural resources in the world are US, China, and India.
Okay.
So US, China, and India are the largest consumer of natural resources, right, in the world.
And we're in a pickle.
We are in a pickle with all of them.
Yes.
We are in a pickle with US. They have tariffs on us. We are pickle on the Chinese, right, because they have the tariffs on us.
Yes.
And it was horrible, but they recently killed 4 Canadians.
Yes.
Right?
I've been reading about that.
Yeah, and Indians, it's a whole another story. They don't want to talk to us even, right? So what are you doing? You are a resource-centric country and you are not dealing with the top 3 consumers in the world, right? So that's why I say that our economy is shackled.
Would our relations with those countries, Harry, with your perspective and background, how do we build better trade relationships with them? Or is there damage that those trade relationships and discussions won't even happen today? Have we damaged those relationships, or what needs to happen?
So, lots of stories of how we got here. So let's understand the Chinese first. So we arrested the CEO of Huawei.
Huawei, I remember this story, yes.
On the request of United States. She took off from Mexico. She was not arrested there. But we arrested her on the request of United States. Okay? So we went downhill with the Chinese, starting from there. Right? They have almost they are doing all of this because of this is where it started. But this is not where it got escalated. Then what did we do? We got in Stellantis for manufacturing batteries in Canada. Okay, it is based out of Europe, right? It has contracts in Quebec and Ontario, if I'm not wrong, to manufacture batteries, right? And because of our batteries are not competitive, right, in North America, because the cost of production is higher, right, we started tariffing the Chinese. So Chinese EVs and Chinese batteries, we put tariffs on it to protect investment by Stellantis, right, in Canada, right? News, the company has gone bankrupt. So we put tariffs on Chinese to start a battery manufacturing plant in Canada, and the company who was going to start it has completely gone bankrupt now. So the project has not started, but we put tariffs on the Chinese, right? So what did Chinese do? Chinese hit us back.
Yes.
But it's not hitting back equally because it was an Eastern Canadian thing. The investment was coming into the Eastern Canada.
Yes.
Right? Because Eastern Canada would have been impacted by cheaper imports from China, we protected them by putting tariffs on China. But how does China retaliate? It puts tariffs on Western Canada because canola is not produced in the East. It is produced in the West.
Yes.
Right. So there is again a divide between the Eastern Canada and Western Canada. So people in the West don't feel that Canada, the greater Canada, has their best interest.
Okay, and what
Right.
about India then?
India, there were allegations that India did a cross-border killing and it killed one of the political
Yes.
so it's politics. So, but it's not like whatever happened was wrong, but there is a way of approaching these things, right? You shouldn't be standing up in the parliament and stating, and there are diplomatic channels to deal with all of this, right? It happens all over the world, right? And all over the world people deal with it in backroom meetings, right, away from the media, right, and all of it. So that's where the Indian relation went sour, and US is, we are too dependent on them.
Yes.
Trump is a bully, right? We are caught with our pants down, right? So he's going to bully us. So we are too dependent on them. Each of our province, starting from the east, going to the west,
all the way across,
the largest trading partner for all our provinces, right, starting from the east to the west, is United States. So Alberta trade more with the United States than it does with BC,
yes,
right, and rest of the world. And same for other provinces too. So this just cannot work. We are too dependent on United States right now, and whatever they do is going to impact us a lot. So that was one part. Now that's not the only thing happening, right? If you look at economic growth, so economic growth, any country grows in economic terms because of three reasons.
Yes.
The first one is capital. Second one is tech, investments in tech, right? Investments to increase productivity. The third one is labor. So let's understand one by one, right? For people who are not familiar. What is capital? So it is people investing in your country, right? From outside or from inside. So if you and me make, let's say, a Chinese person buys some Canadian stock. So that is a capital inflow for us.
Okay.
He's buying Canadian businesses. He's investing in Canadian businesses. So that is capital inflow. Capital inflow helps economic growth. Then the second part is the tech investment. Tech investment is it need not be only tech. So example, a carpenter who is working with his hands.
Okay.
Now he buys some machines. So his productivity improves. And it helps the economy.
Far more efficient
for less amount of time, right? So making your human capital more productive, right? Using tech investments. So it could be investments in infra, it could be investments in tech, AI, and all of that. The third part is the labor part. If you just increase the population, it is going to grow our economy.
Okay.
So let's understand how Canada has done in all of these three parts. So first is capital, inflows or outflows. Since 2015 till 2025, right?
10 years.
10 years, $500 billion has left our country. Left.
People have pulled their money
out and invested elsewhere. So a Chinese person who had some Canadian stocks in the last 10 years, he or she has sold those stocks and taken those money out. Or Canadians, instead of investing in Canada, they're investing in United States or somewhere else.
Yes.
So capital has flown out of our country. So we have chased capital away, and it is almost $500 billion. So that puts downward pressure on our economy. Okay. Now let's understand the tech part. So in 2015, for every $1 invested by the Americans, right?
Yes.
In tech, in improving productivity, Canada was investing 78 cents.
So just within our own countries.
79.
So the United States put in $1.
Yes.
And we put in equivalent 79 cents.
Yeah.
And that's our own investment in our own
Yes.
tech and efficiencies.
So those are business investments. So if an American business is buying tech worth of $1, Canadian businesses were not that far behind. We were buying it for 80 cents worth, right? So if an AI company in United States is upgrading, Canadian company was also upgrading. Maybe not on par, but little bit behind. But that has completely shifted now. If Americans are putting in $1, if American businesses are putting $1 to improve their productivity, we are just putting 50, to be very precise, 55 cents.
What has caused that then? Why have
Canadian
we
businesses
pulled back?
have refused to invest in the same way they were doing in 2015, in 2024.
What has caused
So
that?
they have pulled it back. Less incentives, less tax break, right? Policy hurdles, red tape.
So there's no incentive to find efficiencies,
Exactly.
produce more,
Yes.
because we're taxed more?
Because
Or because-
businesses are not encouraged in terms of capital investments,
Okay.
right? Plus, we'll talk about labor. Like, labor is like opium. If you get cheap labor, right, you invest less, right? So we have inflated labor a lot. So that has created a situation where Canadian businesses are investing less than what they used to. So productivity wise, today a Canadian worker is far less productive than he or she was in 2015.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
When Americans are breaking all records in productivity, we are underinvested in our own markets.
Because of new systems, new technologies, new processes
We are not adopting them
as
as
quickly.
quickly as Americans.
Yeah.
Right now we are in trouble. So what does the government do? So L is like capital is lacking, tech is lacking. So how do you sustain our economy?
You bring
in
in
labor.
labor.
So we always have been welcoming to immigrants. Majority of Canadians, if you poll them right like across the century, were always pro immigrants, right? We understand that our birth rates are not keeping up, right? To keep a functioning economy, we have
Yes.
to bring in more labor, but it has to be sustainable,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
For example, like we used to bring in around like 120, 130,000 ish like new people, right, through permanent residency every year. We went it up to 400 plus in the last 2 years. So from 120 ish, we just quadruple it. And that's not the only part. Like the temporary residence, the work permits, we just exploded it.
And the
4
study
point-
permits.
study permits. 4.5% of our population, right, was temporary in 2015. Now it is more than 9%. So every like 1/10 if you meet 10 people, every one person is either a student or on work permit. That is far higher than our historical past.
Okay.
Also, the permanent residents that we are taking in, right, is far higher than our historical numbers. So what does it do? It reduces the lifestyle, right?
Yes.
It puts downward pressure on wages. Right?
Housing.
It puts upward pressure on housing.
Upward pressure on housing.
It
Okay.
puts
Yes.
downward pressure on healthcare, right?
Okay.
We are going to cover healthcare in details. I know.
Yes, I
It's
know.
the
We're
plan.
both passionate
But
about it.
Just to share, like in 2015, the wait times for an hospital for like elective surgeries was less than 6 months. So if you fall down, you break your knee, it's not emergency, so it's an elective surgery then.
Yes.
So it used to take 6 months. It's fair, right? You can argue whether that's fair or not, right? But 6 months when it is free, people can usually handle it. Right now, that has crossed 3 years. So if you fall down and break your knee, right, on an average, you have to wait 3 years plus to get it operated.
Yeah, and different wait times in different provinces.
Different wait
but
times in different provinces, but averages.
yeah, let's go back. Absolutely. And healthcare is a whole nother
Yeah.
bee in our bonnets, but let's get back to the upward and downward pressures, because I think that is something maybe that the average person also doesn't fully understand. Like
Yes.
even, and I put myself in that category.
Yeah.
Harry, is we have all these new people joining us, and it puts pressures on different parts of our life and, you know, living in Canada. And it can be surprising. And then Canada doesn't meet the expectations of everybody who has come.
Yeah.
And then there's pressures on the Canadians who are already here. So then we get some of those tensions rising
And
up.
it has a lot of like angles to it. Like for an older Canadian, right,
Yes.
who is like in the healthcare system, who needs more healthcare now. It's just a statistical fact. As you get older, you need more healthcare.
Yes.
So for them, it's a quality of life issue now, right? You have paid taxes all your life, right, to expect a certain level of healthcare. And when it's time for you to utilize that, it's not there for you. So it breaks your dreams, right? For younger Canadians, let's say you are somewhere in your 30s, just had a kid, your kids don't have a school to go to. There are overflow schools,
That's
jammed
right.
classrooms.
We do have overflowing schools.
Yeah. So again, a quality of life factor. So people maybe who were 20 years before us, who had kids 20 years before us, they had lesser classroom sizes. They had more schools as an option. But newer Canadians or newer parents don't have schools to send to. Because we have inflated our population so fast, it is putting downward pressure on all our services.
Okay.
But you have to remember, at the same time, we are not earning the way we used to.
That's
So,
right. Our
like
wages have changed, haven't they?
Yeah, just to relate to a personal life, right? So you're earning less and you're spending more. This is our situation right now.
Right. For the average Canadian too, right?
Yeah.
All right.
And just to like, people talk like a lot about Americans, like their minimum wage is so less, right? $7.5. Our minimum wage is so high, right? But you know what we have done in last 10 years? Only 1.1% of Americans work on minimum wage in United States. Everyone else earns a way higher paycheck.
Okay.
Almost 6.5% of our population works on minimum wage. So it's 6 times. 1% of Americans
Yes.
working on minimum wage, right? And 6% of Canadians working on minimum wage. Now people will put a point, oh, their minimum wage is way less. Not in every state. The bigger states, New York, right? California, have equivalent wage, like minimum wages as us.
Okay.
And why is that? Because you're putting downward pressure on wages by bringing in so many people. And there are stories like let's say your generation people, right? Gen X, who have young kids now, right? Who have kids of adult age, they're not finding jobs.
Younger adult age.
Younger
Yes, I was
adults.
going to
There
say,
are
I don't
no
think there's
jobs.
many of us having
Yeah.
young children, but yeah, younger
Young
adults.
Yeah.
Yeah, the job situation is different, and I can cite many stories where educated, young, bright, hardworking people,
Yeah.
friends of mine, their children have taken 6 to 12 months to get their first job.
And not only that, like those school jobs, like people used to work in the school, go to small Tim Hortons and like work evening shifts.
Yes.
That's gone.
A lot of
not
those
a
jobs are
reality
gone.
right now.
Yes.
We don't have those jobs anymore. Because those jobs we have given over to like temporary residents, right?
At
So-
minimum wage?
At minimum wage. So that is the new reality, right? So that is the new normal.
So, Harry, let's think about this and what we do about it today, because one thing I always appreciate is that you shed light on it in such a so easy to understand, which makes sense. What do the Gen X people do today? Let's think about from a money situation. How do all of these changes impact perhaps how somebody who is around their 60s, maybe preparing for retirement or in retirement, how does that impact our money today?
So like before I share that, just to bring it home, like few more statistics. In the last 10 years, right, our GDP per capita has only grown like less than 1%. So standard of living has not kept pace with inflation. So our standard of living is lower than 10 years back for us as a country.
Okay.
And it's like, if you see the OECD average, it's almost at the bottom, right? Every country, Germany, Italy, US, right, UK, everyone has outperformed us.
What is the OECD?
OECD is the developed country index. So
Okay.
whoever is considered as a first world country. So the situation today, we started the discussion with like where we were. In 10 years back, we were earning the same amount as Americans do.
Okay.
And our life was better than them because of the social service and like social service net that we have. Today, we are earning in USD terms a median wage of $33,000 and Americans are earning $80,000. So,
What?
Yes. So the richest province in Canada
Yes.
is poorer than the poorest province in United States.
The poorest state in the United
Yes,
States.
poorest states in United States.
Based on our
Yeah.
earnings.
Yes. And just a funny part, like even the current Prime Minister, right, who is the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, right, his own firm,
Just started the job.
just started the job. His own firm divested from Canada in the last 3 or 4 years. So the firm that he was heading, he was like
Yes.
in fund management. So his own firm took all his investments out of Canada. They decreased their investments from $53 billion in 2021 to $50 billion now. So they've
Is
reduced their
is that
investments.
firm a Canadian firm?
It used to be,
It
but
used
he
to be.
moved the office when Trump got elected
Yes.
to New York.
I'm just wanting to clear this for people. So he moved it from Canada to the US. But who
Yes,
owns
ma'am.
that company? Like who own like
Okay,
it's
just
is
a
it a
funny fact.
Canadian based
None
company?
of the companies that
Yes.
we have in Canada
Yes.
are completely owned by Canadians, because even our biggest banks, Royal Bank, TD,
Yes.
right? Iconic Canadian brands.
Yes.
Right? They have been listed in New York, right? NYSE, New York Stock Exchange, and majority of their owners are Americans. So can we really say that we have Canadian companies? The Royal Bank of Canada has ownership of Americans.
Yes, because they own shares, right?
Yes. So the
Oh, I hadn't even thought of it
Yeah.
that way.
So do
this is
we
the first
have-
time you've ever said that.
yeah, do we have Canadian companies? Like just like we have to seriously think, are we so different from 51st state right now?
Be careful.
Yeah. Are we so different? Like it's shocking to people, and I don't want to be an American. Right? I don't want to be. I'm a proud Canadian.
I know.
Right? But what have we done in the last like more than 10 years? 10 years is just the time frame we are comparing, right? All our business, Tim Hortons is not American, like
No.
not Canadian anymore.
We talk about
right?
that in class
So
all the
if
time.
you're like patriotic and drinking a coffee in Tim Hortons, you're not consuming a Canadian product. Royal Bank,
anymore.
when you go and bank with them, they're not completely Canadian owned, right? Majority of stake is American, right? When you go and like just everyday items, like what is a Canadian business and what is a Canadian like sovereign state? We should be sovereign, right? We should protect our companies. We should invest in ourselves, but we haven't done it in last 10 years.
Harry, let's use one of the banks as an example. It doesn't matter which one. It
Yeah.
could be anyone. When you are out selling shares, and I'm being very simplistic, for your company, buy a share, there's just simply more people in Canada to buy shares. I mean, pardon me, more people in the United States to buy shares. Just
Yes.
volumes.
Yes.
And I guess what I'm leaning towards, is it an intentional, we're only going to sell shares to people outside of Canada? Because I don't think that's the case. Or am I being naive? Because there's just more people to buy shares of that Canadian bank. And so, therefore, proportionately, more Americans own shares. Does that have I laid that out properly?
Yeah, it's a topic that like we can go for hours, right? Why it is that way? But just a quick fact, right? Just a quick like summary of all our discussions. We have disallowed Canadian banks from investing in resource projects. So let's say I have to start an oil and gas company like in Alberta, or like let's not be Alberta specific. Let's say I want to like mine some uranium, like green energy, uranium, sustainable. I want to mine it in Saskatchewan. I want to start a new company, right? It is impossible to get funding from a Canadian bank right now, right? Because of the procedural things, because of laws and regulations and whatnot.
They can't be an investor.
They can't be an investor. So what happens? So people go down south to raise money from Americans. Berkshire Hathaway, which is an like
Yes.
American company, right? Warren Buffett's company, right? It feels more easy to invest in Canadian resource projects than a Canadian firm. Is that fair?
It's easier to invest in a resource project in Canada
Yeah.
than another company.
Yeah. Because they are not scrutinized that hard. Berkshire Hathaway has a lot of oil and gas investments.
Yes.
They are not scrutinized that hard under ESG, right? Our firms are.
Okay.
And what are we achieving? Like, just to share a fact, right? We have stopped like most resource projects. We are so negative against the oil sands, right, as Canadians. But the emissions are not moving. The global emissions are still up. Because just to share a fact, China starts a new coal plant every 100 days. So whatever a small country like Canada does, it is undone by China in 100 days.
Because of a new coal plant.
Yeah.
Well, where does that leave us today?
Yeah, so let's talk about it. There is a silver lining.
Yay!
There is always a silver lining.
Yes.
Like in life, when like I remember the Rocky thing, it doesn't matter how hard you can punch. It matters how hard you can get punched and still stand up, right? It is the time for Canada to stand up, right? To claim like our sovereignty back. And because we should be the richest country in the world. The only thing stopping us from doing that is us. It's not Americans. It not every country will look out for its own interest.
Yes.
Right? China will always look out for its own interest. Americans, they are showing that they look out for their own interest too. Right? So we have to start looking out for our own interest too. We have resources like no country on earth, right? 60% of lakes, fresh water,
Oh, our
hydro
water's so
projects,
special. Yeah.
right? Then like potash, energy, mining, gold, diamonds, right? So everything is there with us. So what we have to do, we have to make it easy for us to extract resources and provide it to the world.
So we're stopping ourselves.
Yes.
So
that comes.
So here's the question.
Yeah.
How do people of different generations, and let's look at you and me, Generation
Yes.
X and Millennial, right?
Yes.
How does this impact our money? What do we do today because of this new reality?
Yes.
Because of our new normal.
So I'll talk from the investment point of view, right, first.
Okay.
So it applies to everyone. People who are retiring,
Same.
people who are
There's
young,
no generational difference.
No generational difference. Everyone wants to invest. May it be $50 or may it be $500,000, right? Canada is an opportunity right now to invest. Because if like in investments, there are two things that matter. What you buy and what price do you buy,
Yes.
right? We have good companies out here. Good companies in banking, good companies in resources, good companies in transportation, right? The CP railway and all that stuff. So good companies all around, and they are right now available at great prices.
They're on
Because
sale.
what was happening? Capital was moving out.
Yes.
So the prices are lower than rest of the world.
So it's a good time to invest
It's
here
good
at
time
home.
to invest in Canada right now.
Yes.
Yes.
Will the rest of the world see that? Or is it just we
We
need
have
to see
to
it for
market,
ourselves? We have to
right?
market.
We have to market.
Right. Okay.
And a question for you, like we talked about all of this, right? How resource sector is depressed, how all
Yes.
the sectors are depressed. Like how should a young professional, right,
Yes.
think about their career?
Well, here's something that I've been saying on repeat for a little while now, probably a year, is that our greatest skill for today's workplace, especially with the world that we're living in, is the ability to continuously learn. And changing equals learning. And the people that have worked with me for a while know I have a real mantra about that. The minute we think we know everything, or the minute we think we are a specialist in our chosen field, whatever it is, we run the risk of being unemployable, because we have to pivot, we have to stay abreast of our industries. And so the ability to learn and the ability to continually change will allow you to maybe go deeper in an industry and be ready when the changes come, or to step across into a new industry. So I think especially younger people just entering the workplace, entry to practice, whatever that is, the ability to continually learn is the master skill. I also think for many of us, and let's just look at Generation X for a minute here. Many of us maybe were specialists in a field, 20 years in quality assurance, or I'm a pipeline engineer. It begs us to keep learning, and we can't be scared of going into new industries, even at this age. And rather than look at one career being over and a new one starting, it's just the next evolution. And so I really truly believe that the greatest skill that we can have, and that will make us all employable forever, is the ability to continually learn.
And so it's a great point, like just sharing from my perspective, right? It's important to get mentored, right? Because if you can connect with a different generation than yours,
Yes.
right, you can actually earn a lot of wisdom. Example, like I'll just like if you're an entrepreneur, you're a young person or a new immigrant, and you want to start a business. It is better to go and work with someone who has done the same business, right,
Yes.
for many years, just to get that wisdom,
Yes.
because you will otherwise make a lot of costly mistakes.
Yes, and people that have gone through that, if we think about the role of mentoring in career development today, people that have gone before you always are happy to share the lessons. And we
Yes.
hear that lots of discussions on LinkedIn and so forth on people do want to share.
Yeah.
You might still walk into the same situation, but at least you will know what you're walking into.
Yeah.
And today's multi-generational workplace or community, or the fact that many of us are working later, supports that mentorship. I will say that mentorship is important as well, and it's another way to continually learn. And the best mentorships are the ones that you seek out for yourself, actually.
Yeah.
It's very, very effective. It's a good, corporate learning strategy too. In a corporate, we won't get into that. But if you find yourself with an entrepreneurial spirit and want to learn more about that industry, go find that mentor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like,
And there are people that went before you.
and like there are funny things that can happen, like I know a friend of mine, like who was a plumber, like who did trade school, and he went out. He was a young person, like 20s, in his 20s, and he started working with an older Canadian, right, who had a plumbing business and worked there for a few years. Really got along well with that older Canadian. And that older Canadian, because our country is aging, so
Yes.
a lot of people are retiring. So that older gentleman, right, wanted to retire. So what does he do? Instead of selling his business in the market, right, he gives an option for him to buy that business through his work. So it's called as like a financing deal. So
Yes.
you buy a business in finance, from your profits you share like
Yes.
a certain money back and you pay it back. So there are a lot of such opportunities, and especially in intergenerational play, right? So if you can approach someone who is not from the same generation, you can gain wisdom, right, as well as they can help you set up for your life.
Do you think we're going to see more of that in this new normal that we have with what's happening just with all these trade wars?
I hope so, because like Canadians are very helpful by nature. Like so if you can connect well, if you can share your stories, if you can show that you care and you work and you can accept the culture, right, then miracles can happen, right? Like, so a lot of Canadians are retiring, right?
Well, they're hoping to, Harry.
They're hoping to, and some of them don't find buyers, right? Like, it's hard to sell your business, right? That is sharing my experience. We
Yes.
used to run a small business and we tried to sell it, me and my wife, and it took us almost a year.
Yes.
And eventually we sold it to a friend, right? So to someone that we knew.
That you knew.
So if that is going to happen, it is better to buy those businesses, right, through sweat equity, through connections.
And that keeps us investing in Canada, doesn't it?
Exactly. Rather than like some American company buying Canadian companies, or not only Americans, it's all over the world. People do that, right?
Yes.
So it's better to sell to our own, right? So
Than to sell elsewhere.
yeah.
If we think about our new normal with everything you shared today, how does this impact our overall life and our quality of life in Canada?
So quality of life is down, like I shared.
Yes.
But when things are down, the only way to go is up, right? So we have to be we have to be really strategic about it. We need immigration to fill the gaps, but we need limited immigration that doesn't create long-lasting impacts on quality of life. So it doesn't lead to wage suppression, it doesn't lead to like no school for kids or no health care for people. So we have to be very cognizant about that fact. So we need to micro target immigration. So
Yes.
if we need doctors, get only doctors. If we need nurses, get only nurses. If we need
very, very
tradespeople,
specific
be
and
very
targeted.
specific and targeted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And reduce the numbers for sure. We cannot bring in 1 million people every year, right, and expect quality of life to be the same, right? So that's one part. What we can do, we can like
Yes.
do our own part, buy more Canadian, right? Invest more Canadian. If you like,
Travel in Canada
travel
more
in
too. I think
Canada,
that's
right?
up.
We
That
have
was
a
in the news this week.
Beautiful country,
Yes.
like the West Coast Trail or like the Eastern Coast. They're very beautiful, right? So let's make our small efforts by traveling locally, buying locally, investing locally, right? So our businesses have more money, right? Our workers have better productivity because business can then spend in productivity gains, all of that.
Okay. Well, I know that we started with a huge topic on this,
Yeah.
but I also think that my head is spinning with a lot more questions, which will go to a lot more of our new realities today in all of these areas. And I think understanding what is happening around us economically is really, really empowering to the average person walking the street, Harry. And I know in my generation, we didn't have access to this information, or maybe we didn't seek it out. But the generations today, like yours and the Gen Zs, etc., this is all around every day. And we can have a choice to let it depress us or get scared, or we can start to ask more questions to understand, because it does help us piece together, right?
Yes.
Our new normal today. And it helps us continue with our lives. But in order to do that, we have to have these conversations and not be afraid to talk to our family members either, right?
Absolutely.
And bring up the history and to understand this from different perspectives. And that is what I've always gained from you, is that different perspective from your background of education, which is different from mine, your cultural background, which is different than mine, your gender, your age. And when we put all that together, we can just start to make sense of it all, which is our goal, right?
Yeah.
Let's just make
Absolutely.
sense of it.
And just to segue or give preview of our next discussion. So we talked a lot about like downward pressures that immigration creates and policy
Yes.
creates. So on healthcare, right? So you bring in more immigrants, there are enough spaces for them in our hospitals or doctors. So just to give a preview for everyone about the next episode, what has been your experience with this downward pressure that you have experienced in your lifetime in healthcare?
Well, I will say, without giving away too much, that when I have needed a surgery, I have had a surgery. My family has gotten good health care. I'm thankful. And I've had the same family doctor for almost 26 years. However, I am entering a new phase of life, and it is proving to be an interesting journey. I have started to have a philosophy, which maybe is a good way to leave this with Harry to open up next time, is that I'm not sure that our medical system and healthcare system is any longer a hallmark of Canada. And it breaks my heart to say that, but I'll have lots to share with you on the next conversation.
Looking forward to it. So anyone who wants to know more about our healthcare system, please tune in.
Yep.
See you in the next one.
Our new healthcare.
Our
See
new
you then.
normal.
Our new normal healthcare.